What would happen if every supervolcano on the planet erupted at once? What about an earthquake so massive that it shook the world for 30 long minutes? What if another planet suddenly decided to give ours a world-ending kiss? And could a pandemic far worse than COVID-19 spell extinction for the human race? Join us as we take a look at 10 natural disasters that could end life on Earth as we know it. The largest volcanic eruption in recorded human history is the 1815 eruption of Mount Tambora in Indonesia. While the blast claimed 92,000 lives, Tambora itself is a molehill compared to the smallest supervolcano on Earth. But what separates a normal volcano from a supervolcano? According to the U.S. Geological Survey, a supervolcano is any volcanic center that's had an eruption magnitude of 8 on the Volcanic Explosivity Index. For the record, 8 is as high as you can go and is literally described as apocalyptic by the National Park Service. The scary part? There are 12 of these time bombs scattered across the world. So what would happen if one of them went off? Even worse, what would happen if all of them went off? Let's just say, hypothetically, Yellowstone National Park decides to blow its lid. According to the USGS, the entire world would feel its cataclysmic effects. Ash would fall over the immediate area for years, even decades, which would cause radical changes in the global climate. Montana, Idaho, and Wyoming would be buried in volcanic ash, while the rest of the US wore a thick coating. Thankfully, a Yellowstone eruption wouldn't end the human race. At least, that's what the USGS wants us to think. But what if all the supervolcanoes decided to blow? Well, since there's a supervolcano on every continent, even Antarctica, you'll never find a place to hide. You will have decent warning, though, since the ground will tremble with earthquakes about a month before it happens. Then, billions of tons of ash and magma would spew into the air simultaneously. Assuming you survive the initial blasts, you'd have to deal with apocalyptic fallout for, well, the rest of forever. The year was 1980. Nobel Prize-winning physicist Luis Alvarez and his geologist son Walter discovered a centimeter-thick layer of iridium-enriched clay in Italy, right along the KT boundary. Now, if you don't know, the KT boundary is a geological layer of rock that scientists use to mark the extinction of dinosaurs. According to the History Channel, iridium is rare on Earth, but abundant in space. This could only mean one thing. A massive asteroid struck Earth and wiped out all the dinosaurs. So, could we survive another? Scientists say something between 7 and 8 miles wide would bring about the apocalypse. Once it struck, it would create a dust plume that enveloped the entire planet. It would block out the sun and spike temperatures around the impact site. Only a select few would survive to carry on the human race. For the record, the Chicxulub event, the asteroid that killed the dinosaurs, was between 6 and 9 miles wide. According to NASA, it would take something 60 miles wide, or about the gap between Boston and Providence, Rhode Island, to completely wipe out life on Earth. So, how close have we come? Well, let's ask the Planetary Society. In 1908, a 30-meter asteroid exploded over Siberia, knocking down 80 million trees over 830 square miles. It was 1,000 times more powerful than the bomb dropped on Hiroshima. Another close call happened elsewhere in Russia in 2013, when a 20-meter asteroid blew up with the force of 500 kilotons of TNT. The shockwave injured 1,500 people and damaged some 7,200 buildings. Thankfully, NASA tracks anything over half a mile wide. They don't believe any of these asteroids have a significant chance of hitting Earth anytime soon. On July 10th of 1958, a 7.7 magnitude earthquake struck on the Fairweather Fault in Alaska. The quake caused 30.6 million cubic meters of rock to slide into Lituya Bay, leading to a 1,700-foot tsunami wave, the largest ever recorded in human history. But could a massive tsunami wave end life as we know it? Well, the wave wouldn't destroy everything. But the flooding, combined with whatever caused the wave, would probably do the trick. Consider the Younger Dryas impact theory. In a nutshell, Earth began shifting from a cold glacial state to a warmer climate about 14,500 years ago. During the transition, something caused temperatures to revert back to near glacial conditions. This period is called the Younger Dryas. It abruptly ended 11,500 years ago, and we're not totally sure why. Some believe an asteroid, or fragments of an asteroid, smashed into Earth, causing a rapid rise in temperature. The space rock would likely have smashed into large glaciers around the world, and more specifically in North America. This sudden burst of energy would have blown the glaciers apart, melting unthinkable amounts of ice in a moment's notice, and ultimately would have triggered a mega tsunami unlike anything we've seen before. If you're a Joe Rogan fan, you've probably heard Randall Carlson and Graham Hancock talking about it. Many in the scientific community either rebuke or agree with their claims. But regarding pure mega tsunamis, the most popular theory is the Cumbre Vieja mega tsunami. Scientists believe a powerful eruption at the La Palma volcano in the Canary Islands, an archipelago off the northwest coast of Africa, would be enough to break it in half. As a result, 500 cubic kilometers of rock would plummet into the Pacific Ocean at 220 miles per hour. It would trigger a mega tsunami up to 300 feet tall that would literally race across the ocean, smashing into North America, South America, Western Europe, and the African coast. Still, it would not wipe out the human race. Plenty of cosmic catastrophes could end life as we know it, but gamma rays are a special kind of scary. Gamma and X-rays are similar in that both can penetrate your body. You need several feet of concrete or a few inches of lead to stop them. Gamma rays make up most of the fallout from nuclear explosions and are the most immediate hazard to life. If you stand next to an object producing gamma rays, you'll get fried like an egg. Gamma ray bursts are massive explosions in far-off galaxies that send gamma rays cascading into the abyss. These bursts are among the most powerful events in the known universe. They release the same amount of energy as a supernova or a collapsing star, but in a fraction of the time. Supernovas take weeks to occur. Gamma ray bursts happen in literal seconds. Astronomers believe they occur when two highly magnetized objects collide, like if a neutron star crashes into a black hole. On average, our scientists detect about one gamma ray burst every day, and those are only the ones we see. Thankfully, they don't believe the radiation could affect Earth. It would have to happen right next door, cosmically speaking. If one occurred in the Milky Way and the beams focused on Earth, the radiation would wipe out the ozone layer. We would lose our protection from the sun, and lethal radiation poison would cause mass extinctions across the planet. So, while the chances are extremely rare, it still only takes one. According to the USGS, the strongest recorded earthquake in human history was a 9.6 magnitude quake in Biobío, Chile in 1960. It likely occurred along the Liquiñe-Ofqui Fault, a 750-mile fault line that stretches north to south in Chile. Now, we don't have very accurate numbers regarding the impact. Estimates put the fatalities between 1,000 and 6,000 and damage between $400 million and $800 million, or between $4 and $8 billion today. The Biobío quake happened, and it didn't end the world. So, what kind of catastrophic geological event could? According to the USGS, a 10.0 magnitude megaquake is impossible. Magnitudes are related to the length of the fault line on which the quake occurs. Simply put, the longer the fault, the larger the quake. There isn't a fault long enough that we know of to trigger a 10.0 earthquake. If there was, it would nearly wrap around the entire planet. If there was such a fault line, you could expect the earthquake to be as powerful as a 9.0. However, it would last significantly longer, upwards of 30 minutes according to BBC Science. On average, earthquakes only last between 10 and 30 seconds. So, imagine the ground shaking for a full half hour. any world-ending events would likely occur due to a domino effect of volcanic eruptions, tsunamis, and nuclear meltdowns. Between 10,000 BCE and 1700 CE, the global population only grew about 0.04% annually. Then, at the turn of the 19th century, the population exploded. In 1801, the world had about 1 billion people. In November of 2022, it officially eclipsed 8 billion. Today's population accounts for 6.5% of all humans to ever exist, about 108 billion people. But what would happen if a chunk of those people suddenly disappeared? What if Thanos came down, snapped his fingers, and half of us just vanished? Well, first, we'd probably experience widespread shortages in basically everything. Food, electricity, water, emergency services, medical staff, all of those people we subconsciously rely on would be gone instantly. Chaos would ensue, and we'd give it about a week before we're at each other's throats. But since that can't happen, what if the population steadily but rapidly declined over the next few decades? Now, we've all seen Elon Musk tweet about it. According to the man himself, a collapsing birth rate is the biggest danger civilization faces by far. Can we speak to the accuracy of that statement? Not really. But is there some hypothetical truth to it? According to the World Economic Forum, global fertility rates have decreased by 50% over the past 70 years. Low birth rates, combined with longer life expectancies, effectively create an older population. In turn, an older population puts more strain on healthcare systems. You'd also have more people retiring than entering the workforce, aka more people claiming Social Security than paying into it. This could eventually lead to a complete economic collapse. Economic collapse leads to anarchy, and anarchy leads to total destruction. Hypothetically, it is, like everything else in this video, just a theory, but it's a pretty damn scary one. Now, what would happen if another planet in our solar system fell out of orbit and began barreling towards Earth? Well, for starters, we'd all spend our final days, perhaps weeks, watching this distant object get closer and closer. It'll look like it's inching across the sky, but it's really moving at about 24,600 miles per hour. Things will get worse when the planet passes the moon. The gravitational pull on our oceans would flood our coastal cities in seconds. About 30 hours before the collision, the gravitational force between both planets would expedite the process. Every natural disaster you can think of would happen at once. Hurricanes, tsunamis, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, everything. In the nanoseconds before the crash, the intersecting atmosphere would get so hot that all life on Earth would be vaporized in a flash. The land would turn to molten rock, while the Earth's core melts the planet from within. Soon, Earth would collapse in on itself. Its remnants, and what remains of the other planet, would form an asteroid belt orbiting the Sun. It's a long-standing belief in the scientific community that this has already happened. About 4.5 billion years ago, a rogue protoplanet named Theia struck Earth while it was just a baby. The debris from that collision collected and fused in the atmosphere, creating the moon we know and love today. Climate change is on everyone's mind. But what would happen in the most extreme scenarios? What would happen if the Earth's average temperature suddenly spiked out of nowhere, or suddenly cooled so much that we fell into another ice age? According to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, or the IPCC, an increase of just 1 degree Fahrenheit would mimic conditions we haven't seen in 6,000 years. The US would experience a drought worse than the Dust Bowl of the 1930s, and low-lying island nations could be underwater due to melting ice caps. An increase of 5 degrees would spiral us into complete chaos. Most of the underground water reservoirs would dry up. Then, China would probably invade Russia, while the United States marches on Canada. Both would be the only places left on Earth that can grow crops. Famine would slash the population down to about 1 billion people, with most of them gravitating toward the poles. It'd be like we were living 55 million years ago, when the oceans were acidic and CO2 levels exceeded 1,000 parts per million, which is a lot. On the flip side, another ice age would be just as bad. Once densely populated regions would be uninhabitable now that they're covered in thick ice sheets. According to ice sheet modeler Dr. Stephen Phipps, North America, Northern Europe, and the whole of Northern Asia would be covered in ice. Sea levels would fall drastically, nearly 400 feet, causing marine channels like the Bering Strait and the Mediterranean Sea to disappear. This would, however, create new land areas for people to inhabit. Whichever one you think is worse is totally up to you. We owe our very existence to the sun. But if it wanted to, the sun could snuff us out in the blink of an eye. Aside from collapsing or Earth smashing right into it, how else could the sun destroy the planet? Solar flares might be one terrifying answer. They are intense bursts of electromagnetic radiation that explode from the sun's atmosphere. Solar flares can superheat loose material floating around them, causing giant blobs of plasma to slingshot toward Earth. Thankfully, our atmosphere filters this stuff out before it causes any harm, but they can still mess with radar systems and knock satellites offline. According to Alex Young of NASA, even in the largest solar flares that we've seen in the past 10,000 years, the effect is not enough to damage the atmosphere such that we are no longer protected. But what if it was? While the flare itself wouldn't destroy everything, it would likely create a chain reaction of catastrophic events. For starters, the electric grid would probably go down, disrupting communications, internet connections, and obviously access to electricity. Chaos would inevitably ensue, which would likely lead to widespread panic. COVID-19 wasn't fun for anybody, but it wasn't a world-ending natural pandemic. According to a quick Google search, COVID has claimed 6.7 million lives as of January of 2023. So what does that compare to other historical pandemics, and what would it take to end the human race? According to National Geographic, plague outbreaks are the most notorious epidemics in human history. And yes, plague is a real disease. According to the CDC, it's a disease that affects humans and other mammals caused by the bacterium Yersinia pestis. You can catch plague through rodent or flea bites, or by handling infected animals. So how bad is plague? The plague of Justinian claimed 10,000 lives per day in 6th century Constantinople. Historians believe 100 million people, or about half of Europe's population, perished before it subsided in the 700s. Meanwhile, the Black Death claimed 25 million lives across 14th century Asia and Europe, eventually leading to the Great Plague of London between 1665 and 1666. According to BBC Science Focus magazine, there are two paths humanity could walk down. First off, it's unlikely that a natural virus could wipe us all out. Viruses need their hosts to survive so that they can spread. We might lose many people, but it wouldn't end the world. However, a synthetic virus released into the population could quickly devastate the human race. On the other hand, resistance to antibiotics could send us back to the Dark Ages. Before penicillin was discovered in 1928, minor infections meant certain death. As we rely more and more on antibiotics today, superbugs could emerge that are immune to even our strongest medicines. If you enjoyed this video and want to see another just like it, be sure to click the link on screen now. With that, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.